Welcome to T. Lokes, Tucson's local business podcast. I'm your host, L. Connor McEverly, and in each episode, we embark on a journey to connect with the passionate minds behind the businesses and nonprofits that make our community thrive. Join me as I sit down with the owners, visionaries, and change makers who pour their hearts into shaping the local landscape. We explore the challenges, triumphs, and unique journeys that define Tucson's business community. From the corner coffee shop to the innovative startups and impactful nonprofits, T. Lokes is your window into the diverse stories that make our city special. Tune in and get ready to get connected. This is T. Lokes. Howdy, folks. Welcome to T. Lokes, your Tucson local business podcast. I'm your host, L. Connor McEverly, and joining me via virtual meeting today is the director of the Center for Healthy Nonprofits, a branch of the Community Foundation of Southern Arizona. It is my pleasure to introduce to the show today Paula Van Ness. Paula is a seasoned nonprofit executive with more than 45 years in CEO and executive director positions both locally and nationally. She currently serves on the Pima Community College Foundation Board and the St. Francis in the Foothills Church Council. She has a master's degree in organizational development from the University of San Francisco, among many, many other accolades. Paula, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great. It's good to talk to you, Connor.
It's great to have you here. Thank you so much. So let's kick it off. Tell me about the Center for Healthy Nonprofits. When was it founded? When did you become the director? And what is your mission?
I returned to Tucson after being away many years. I actually did go to the University of Arizona for my undergraduate work and returned to Tucson in 2018 with the intention of becoming a volunteer at the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona, not knowing what I was going to do. And when I met with the staff team there, they said, gosh, we have an opportunity. We've just renovated a building. We're calling it the Community Foundation campus. We have great meeting room facilities. We actually have suites of offices for nonprofits. And we've moved in, but there's nobody else here. Can you help us figure out how to get some people in here? And I was like, sure. And they said, no, we have a vision of this being a place where nonprofits can gather together, can learn from each other, can learn from experts, that they'll grow and good collaborations may come out of it as well. And so actually in 2019, then in January of 2019, I began my year of volunteering about 20 hours a week and really spend a lot of that time talking to nonprofits, talking to the consultants that worked with them, trying to find out what were the training needs that organizations had, what was offered already and didn't need to be done by anybody new, but what were the gaps. And so we began offering programs then early in 2019. And at that point, maybe a month or two into it, I remember having a conversation with the CEO of the Community Foundation. And I said, I think people are confused. They've asked me if I'm renting space here to run training programs. They don't understand that what we're doing is a part of the Community Foundation. And I think it needs a brand. I think it needs a brand name. And so I suggested to him that we call it the Center for Healthy Nonprofits. So it means that really the center officially was launched with that name and with me in the position of being the director of that at the beginning of 2020. So right now we're in the 5th year of full operations of the center.
Awesome. And you've mentioned a little bit about some of the services and the resources you offer for nonprofits. Mm-hmm. What are some of those?
We try to offer a variety of training programs. Sometimes it's an hour, maybe 2 hours of a chance to interact with an expert in a particular area. We call those the Ask an Expert sessions. It's sort of a lunch and learn kind of thing quite often. And of course, since COVID, much of that has been done on Zoom. Then we have multi-session programs. We did one a couple years ago on financial management. Over about 7 months, over 100 people joined us for a couple of hour session on a particular part of financial management of nonprofits that they wanted to learn about. We have a cohort of executive directors who are new in their jobs. We call that survival skills for executive directors. We have another cohort where they meet over like 7-month period for a couple hours a month. And that's for people who want to have a career in nonprofits and want to figure out what do they need to know and learn in order to advance, to move into more senior positions. And frankly, over 90% of the people in that program say someday they want to be an executive director or a CEO. So we're trying to build a pipeline for future leaders of our nonprofit organizations within Tucson and Southern Arizona. And then we fill it in where we have a partners in leadership program where we're working with a number of nonprofits where we've got members of their board and their executive director together in a team going through sessions over a period of some months. We have peer-to-peer roundtables where people that all do HR can get together. We have a peer-to-peer roundtable for people in marketing and communications. We have an opportunity for people who are either on boards of directors or work with boards to come to what we call Board Cafe. And we do Board Cafe once a month as a session that's very informal. We talk about whatever it is that people want to talk about. And sometimes we'll suggest a special topic. And so, for instance, we've got one coming up where we're going to talk about conflict on boards and what do you do to resolve conflict? What's healthy conflict and what's dysfunctional conflict? And so we're always changing, adding new programs. We're on the road now. We're doing training programs in Yuma and Sierra Vista and Green Valley, and have a wonderful opportunity to meet such terrific people in our communities who are working for a wide variety of causes. One of the newer things I think that is going to be coming is there are a number of organizations that are startups and they need support. And actually, I think they want to know each other. So we're going to find a way probably to build a peer-to-peer program starting this summer where they'll have a chance to gather together, learn lessons from each other so they don't have to make the same mistakes, and have a chance to know somebody that they could pick up the phone and call if they ever have a question.
Wow. So that sounds like a ton of resources that really span a lot of different sort of disciplines, or perhaps, solving different problems that nonprofits have.
Yeah. And I think that's right. And, so over the course of a year, I think last year we did over 100 different programs.
Wow.
And I'm still a part-time person. I am actually on the staff of the Community Foundation, and I have a wonderful colleague, Rose Snyder, who is also part-time. So we have the benefit of working with an amazing group of consultants in Tucson and in Southern Arizona who will conduct some of these presentations and be those experts at those sessions. And so it's a wonderful way to draw those resources in. And then once in a while, we'll bring in a national level speaker. In June this year, we're going to bring in the head of the Maslow Research Institute to talk about board culture. And that'll be a special opportunity for about 100 people that can come to that session and learn from him.
Yeah. Wow.
One of the programs that we are very pleased to be able to offer our nonprofits, we call Team Up. And the situation is often that a nonprofit organization may have a challenge they're trying to face, or it's time for them to develop a new strategic plan, or they want someone from the outside who has fresh eyes to look at how they handle their finances, or look at their HR manual and see if it's in compliance with state law. And we have over 100 consultants who are willing to take assignments from us. So we're matching a nonprofit need with consultants' know-how, and they can work on a project together that they define together as a priority for the organization for 20 hours. And then the consultant gets paid by the Center for Healthy Nonprofits. So the nonprofit gets the benefit of that expertise and that guidance. They don't have to pay at all for that kind of service. And they tell us if this were not available, they could never afford in their budgets to bring on a consultant like this. So we're really happy that many of the particularly smaller and mid-sized nonprofits can take advantage of that team up opportunity.
Right. And so it seems like you have this this really great way to help nonprofits, like either in kind of these general sort of networking and community building events, or also getting kind of into the nitty gritty with particular nonprofits that are facing particular issues and need that consulting.
That's exactly right. So we can individualize some of the instruction, and then in another case, it has to be a bit more general. I think what our growing understanding has been is the importance of trying to build the pipeline for future executive directors, I mentioned, for future senior leaders, future board members. We even do a program 2 times a year where 30 nonprofits will come to the campus of the Community Foundation and set up a table with all their literature and their information. And we invite the members of the public to come if they're interested in serving on a board, and they can walk around the room, probably meet up with some organizations they've never heard of before. And perhaps if they click, and if there's a need where an organization is looking for a certain kind of volunteer today, and they are a match, they may end up on their board or as a volunteer. And so we're building that pipeline of board members, because frankly, many of the nonprofit boards are people who are gray-haired, and there's a need for bringing younger people onto boards of directors. So we try to help with that as well.
That's really interesting to me. And do you happen to know why it might seem like younger folks aren't showing up as much in these nonprofit spaces?
I think there may be a misconception that you have to be further along in your career, perhaps, or be more wealthy, because people do know that folks that serve on boards support their organizations financially. Mm-hmm. And so that may put up some barriers on their path that we need to knock away, because one of the great things that happens when a younger person serves on a board, if that board is supportive of that person learning and they mentor them, maybe they give that new board member a buddy who they have coffee with, and they talk about what's going on, that the gifts and talents of that individual person can be shared with the organization, and they don't have to have been, in their career for 10 or 20 or 40 years. They don't have to be wealthy. It does make sense for anyone who serves on the board to support their organization financially. But, Connor, it's less about the amount and more about the symbolism of giving. And that if you can say you have a 100% giving board, there may be a young person who really only could afford to give $25 sitting next to someone who gave $25,000, right. And they are peers. And if they're treated as peers, what a great opportunity. Wow. I served on my first board at the age of 19. Wow. And I was lucky because there was a doctor who was the head of the Pima County Health Department at the time, and a wonderful man. And he would always sit next to me. And when things were going on in the board meeting, he'd look at me and he might lean over and whisper, "You know why she just said that?" Or when they'd ask for someone to serve on a committee or a task force, he'd say, "Raise your hand, raise your hand." And so I had a coach. And yeah. I think that there are boards where younger people who are given a chance to serve, if they have someone, they're lucky enough, as I was, to have someone who looks out for them and helps to mentor them, it can be the most rewarding and wonderful experience. And I really encourage people to not be held back by those misconceptions.
Absolutely. And I think, it's maybe a little understated, but bringing your time and your passion to your community and what you do is almost priceless.
It's wonderful. We talk about the T's. We talk about time, mm-hmm. and talent and treasure, mm-hmm. and all are important. And so, I run into people all the time, and I would say to you, "Hey, Connor, are you on any boards right now?" And you might say, "Well, no, I'm not." Okay, well, let's talk about what kind of an organization gets your heart beating faster. What is it your dream to make a difference? Is it to help young people in middle school because you remember having a tough time in middle school? Or are you a great animal lover and you want to serve a shelter somehow? or the arts are where it's at for you, and you love choral music or you love symphonies, whatever. And so sometimes we find ourselves just helping to be a matchmaker, getting someone who has something to give, has something to share with an organization that would be so welcoming to them.
Right. So I want to take a step in maybe a slightly different direction, but you mentioned how you were on a board at 19, and clearly you have a history, an extensive history of being a chief executive. And throughout the years, what about your experiences shapes your approach?
I think I've had a number of influences over the years. I've had the opportunity to work in some organizations that are finely tuned systems where, everything is just working along as it should. And I've learned a bit about what needs to be in place in that way. I've worked in organizations and been on the board of organizations that do a wonderful job of cultivating connection with their cause, of serving and engaging donors and members of the community in their work. And so I have found over the years, everywhere I have either served on a board or served in a staff role, I have left with much more. I take away much more than I think I left behind in that organization. And each one, it's cumulative. So that right now, to be honest with you, I think the role that I have with the Center for Healthy Nonprofits, I have prepared for my entire life. So having been on boards, some good, some not so good, one that was really pretty bad, in organizations at various stages of being startups or in their adolescence or fully mature. I've learned from all of those, and so I can draw on those experiences. I also have made a bunch of mistakes in my life, and I've learned those lessons, and I don't want anybody else to make the same mistake if I can help them from doing that. So there's that bit of drawing on those experiences and not being afraid to share them that actually helps very much.
You have an approach that is defined by like connection, compassion, and coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we often do feel like we are coaches. In fact, my colleague Rose and I are doing some workshops these days, as I mentioned, throughout Southern Arizona. We're calling the one that's focused on boards and board governance, that good governance is a team sport, and trying to help people understand that it's not just like a board is not just like a committee of individuals who come and they sit around a table for a while and they conduct some business and then they leave, but they actually need to begin to get to know each other, to understand each other's gifts and talents, and to function as a team and to bring out the best of everyone. It should be a joy-filled experience to serve on a board. It isn't always, but we can work toward that, and having clarity about what the roles are for the people on the board and how they work with their staff, having clarity about how to use the time you do have together efficiently, getting the business done so you can have real conversation. I think sometimes what makes it less satisfying is that it's a series of reports. Think about yourself sitting at a table for a 2-hour meeting. Report, 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 report from different people. You're sitting there, you're a smart person, you have a lot to offer. You've not even opened your mouth. And then people say, okay, let's pass the cookies and go home. Not a satisfying experience. And it's not tapping into what it is that the board members bring to that table. So helping people get away from that report, report, report into, even something simple like how you construct an agenda for a board meeting to deal with the business items in a quick way so you can have a mission moment, maybe have a guest speaker come in, a client that you've served, and they can tell a story, so that you can have what we call a generative conversation where people are saying, it's like, what if $1 million fell from the sky today, right in the middle of this board table? What would we do with it? Do we have some dreams, some ideas of new programs that we could start? Let's talk about that. That's what it makes for an exciting and, I think, rewarding board experience. So we're trying to help organizations see that possibility, be willing to try some things. And I think we're getting a really wonderful response as we travel around and have that chance to share with people some just tips and tricks, really.
Right. And, kind of playing off of, some of this good response that you've been receiving,
Mhm.
what was one of your first moments of achievement?
Oh God, you're asking me a really hard question. I guess for me, it's hard to come up with a moment, but there are so many even short interactions where it's like a light bulb goes off for somebody. Or they say, I never knew you could do it that way. That those add up, and those together make for a feeling of making a real difference. And for me, that's what my career, that's what my life has been about. And so I feel like I'm a pretty lucky person to be right where I am.
Absolutely. And it's amazing that you feel that way. And I'm sure that that comes across to the many nonprofits and the people that you interact with. I surely can see how passionate you are about this. You've mentioned that you've helped, upwards of 100 nonprofits in the past year, and you've been operating the Center for Healthy Nonprofits for about 5 years. What, in your words, makes the Center for Healthy Nonprofits unique?
Think for us in Southern Arizona, the Center for Healthy Nonprofits has become a hub for people to be drawn in and to find resources available to them that don't have the typical barriers in place, because almost all the training programs that we do, we can offer free of charge. Um, I think we are unique in the sense that we have had one funder, the Connie Hillman Family Foundation, which has fully funded the center since we really got started in 2020. And to have a foundation that deals with a wide range of nonprofits have the trust and the confidence in us to put some of their resources in there to help the organizations that they're trying to help with checks. It's a nice combo. So I think there are certainly other centers for nonprofit excellence and all kinds of names in other communities around the country, but I think ours is special because we are of Southern Arizona. We're committed to Southern Arizona. And we have amazing resources in not just the financial support from the Connie Hillman Foundation, but the consultants that are willing to work with us and the nonprofits that are open to learning, open to collaborating with each other. Board members who maybe serve on one board until they term off and then they're ready for another board. So I think we have a lot of wonderful resources like that we can take advantage of.
Fantastic. And what are some goals that the Center for Healthy Nonprofits is striving for right now?
I think at this point we're looking at the stability of the program and the sustainability of it. And that means how we support the programs should our major funder at some point, a lot of funders move on to other wonderful, enticing things to do. Or so I think we're looking at our own sustainability and what is it that we offer to the community. We actually have been doing a qualitative evaluation over the last couple of months where using the technology of Zoom, some small groups of people who have gone through our programs have had almost like a focus group on Zoom, for a couple of hours, telling their stories about how did they connect with the center, what happened, what did they learn, how did they use it. And so as we listen to the videos that are being created from those small groups, I think we're learning some things that will actually shape our goals for the future. And are there some things that maybe it's time to not do them anymore? Maybe we'll learn something like that. But maybe it's like, here's a gap. Let's see what we can do to fill it. So I think keeping our fresh eyes, if we can, as we look at the situation and and listening carefully to what people tell us they need. I think there seems to be no problem coming up with new ideas. So it's what can we actually take action on?
Gotcha. Now, what might a nonprofit be going through that is a sign that they should reach out to you and the Center for Healthy Nonprofits?
I think quite often people will seek us out when they are in the midst of a transition of some kind. Maybe a leadership transition where a longtime executive director has announced that he or she's retiring, let's say, or the board chair has just gotten a promotion and is moving to Buffalo, and they don't have anybody lined up behind that person to move into the chairmanship of the board, or they've just gotten a big grant and so they're in a different category now. It's a transition from being maybe a small, almost like a family, to actually bringing on more staff and maybe having to grow the board. And so I think oftentimes it will be those transitions that will say, hey, maybe somebody can help us, who's been down that road before. A transition for an organization that perhaps has had a very dominant founder. The people that start nonprofits have so much passion and dreams that they pour into the development of an organization. And after a certain number of years, and they often, they will be on the board, or maybe sometimes founders move into executive director roles, or they try to do both. They try to chair the board and be the executive director. And I think there comes a point in many organizations, it's just another kind of transition where it's time for the founder to step aside and let the people who they have cultivated and brought into the organization take it into its next phase of growth. I think for founders, for board members, for executive directors, there's a trap you can fall into if you start thinking you can't ever leave because you're irreplaceable. Mm-hmm. None of us are irreplaceable, really. Right. And we can actually, if we overstay, we can take an organization down. There's even something called founder syndrome that has been written about and talked about, where it's actually not just an organizational transition, but it can be an organizational crisis when the founder cannot let go and still wants to make all the decisions, be in every meeting, be in the office every day, or whatever. And so organizations that are in the middle of a founder syndrome crisis find their way to us as well.
Gotcha. It seems like there could be a myriad of potential difficulties that could lead someone to come and reach out to you.
That's right. And I think, also because money is important to all organizations, quite often if people are struggling with their fundraising, or they realize that they're way too dependent on one source, like I spoke with an organization just recently that 2/3 of their budget comes from one source. It's the state of Arizona. If the state of Arizona decides not to do that program any longer or pulls it, they don't have anything to fall back on because they've never cultivated individual donors. And so what we don't want to see is that happen, and then they're in a crisis. They come to us going, what are we going to do? We'd like to have them come to us and say, we realize we're at risk because we do not have a wide range of funding sources for our organization. We realize we need to develop an ability to speak to individuals, touch their hearts so that they give. We haven't done that yet. So can you help us set up a way to do that? Or we are anticipating new federal or state funding coming in, and that's going to change the mix in our organization. We want to be ready for that. Can you help us plan ahead for it? And, might require new financial systems and audits and that sort of thing. And so, again, it's a change. I think it's managing change that often, and I hate it when somebody's in crisis. And I get phone calls on a Friday night at 9:30 from a board chair who might be saying, I think we've got an ethical crisis in our organization. Somebody on the board did this. What do you think? What should we do? And so, I do my best to try to help talk it through with that person and see if they can find their way forward and figure out some action steps that they can take. It's hard when you are truly in crisis. So less of that and more of the planned growth than planned development is what we enjoy working on.
Absolutely. I think kind of prevention is always easier than response, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
for those nonprofits, those listeners out there who are hearing what you're saying and they need your support, or
Mhm.
there are other listeners who just want to get involved, where can they go to learn more about or get involved with the CFSA or the Center for Healthy Nonprofits?
We have a pretty robust website for the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona. So it uses the initials of cfsaz.org. And the Center for Healthy Nonprofits is under the umbrella, of course, of that entity. And so if you went to cfsaz.org and then went to what do we do, I think you can find the Center for Healthy Nonprofits, and it will describe several of the ongoing programs that we have. And we also always have events posted, and so there'll be 8 or 10 or 12 upcoming events, and something might jump off the page at one of your listeners and might say, hey, ooh, I'd like to learn more about that. There's always a way to register for an event.
Okay.
And we do a mix of things in person and on Zoom, but we're still pretty heavy on Zoom because
Yeah.
people got used to not having to drive places.
Yeah.
And when you have to, when you're going to, let's say, a training program that's an hour and a half long, and you have to drive a half an hour to get there, and you have to drive a half an hour to get back to wherever you are coming from, either an office or a home office, that extra hour may keep you from participating. And so we are finding still that people appreciate being able to join a session at 10 o'clock on the nose, not have to leave at 9:30.
Right.
And then when it's over, and they go right next to their next commitment. And so we're honoring that by continuing to do a lot on Zoom.
Awesome. Perfect. And folks, we'll have the links for the website right there in the episode notes for you. So go ahead and check those out. Paula, you mentioned that you have a lot of events. Are there any that are coming up in the near future that people should keep an eye out for?
Well, I think one of the ones coming up at the end of April is a part of that series I talked to you about of just single session topics related to board that we call Board Cafe. So April 26th, it's usually either the third or fourth Monday of the month, you would find a board cafe to be able to drop in and ask a question about a board or make a connection with other people on boards. We have some Ask an Expert sessions coming up. We're doing grant writing training sessions. And of course, I'm not sure if you have any folks from Yuma who are listening to the podcast, but actually we're doing grant writing in Yuma toward the end of April, and hope to have 15 or 20 people who want to sort of demystify the process of applying for grants. So there's just always something new coming up. June we'll have national speaker coming that we're excited about, talking about the culture of a board and how you shape that culture. We're going to have a Board Connect event in June also, where people who are potentially interested in finding out about ways, organizations that are looking for board members, ways that they can get involved. And so that'll be coming up in June as well. So all those things are on our website. We do a regular newsletter from the Community Foundation. It's not too long, and usually our events are at the bottom of it. So people just scroll down and look at what's coming up.
Gotcha. You guys have a lot going on. You really get people involved, and that's amazing.
Yeah, there is a lot going on, and it feels great. Enjoy it a lot.
Good. Now, Paula, it's been really great talking with you today. We are unfortunately at the end of our interview, but I have one last question for you. And this question is, what is one thing that you love about Tucson?
I love being back in Tucson because I love the desert. The resources that we have to be able to go to the Saguaro National Park or spend an afternoon at Tohono Chul or the Botanical Garden, that's a real gift. This is coming from somebody who grew up in Indiana. Very different.
Yeah.
than Tucson. So I think we've got a beautiful community. And of course, I could talk forever about the people, but that is one thing that I really do appreciate is nature.
Absolutely. Nature is what made me fall in love with Tucson.
Mhm.
Absolutely. The
Mhm.
Sky Islands had my heart.
Yes. Wonderful.
Yeah. So, Paula, it was amazing talking with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was a real delight to get to talk to you about the Center for Healthy Nonprofits and how you help the community and those who also help the community.
Well, thanks, Connor. I had a good time talking with you and reminiscing a little bit about how we started and how we got to where we are today. And I appreciate that opportunity. And I do hope that if people want to learn more and they don't see enough on the website, that my contact information is on the website. And I am never too busy for a phone call or an email from somebody.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much, Paula. Have a good one. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for another episode of T. Lokes, your go-to podcast for uncovering the untold stories of Tucson's local businesses and nonprofits. A big thank you to our incredible listeners for joining us on this journey of connection and discovery. Thank you so much to Paula Van Ness from the Center for Healthy Nonprofits for coming onto the show today and sharing with us how you help the community by helping those who help the community. Show them some love and check out their links in the episode notes. A huge thank you to Louis Sanders at Soundhouse Publishing for making our unforgettable podcast theme music. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected with Tucson's vibrant business scene, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback is invaluable, and it helps us continue bringing you engaging conversations. As we wrap up, remember that T. Lokes isn't just a podcast, it's a community. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or our Discord channel and share your thoughts, suggestions, or even recommend a local business or nonprofit you'd like to see featured on the show. Thank you once again for being a part of the T. Lokes community. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep supporting the heartbeat of Tucson. Toodaloo.